Hello and welcome to Gaming Views. I'm Dan H, joined as always by Dan P. We're talking about God of War today, but Dan, you look exhausted, mate. Hard night?
The Norse circular was unforgiving, Daniel. The traffic moved despite the 1,000 Valkyries.
Right. So standard Monday morning then?
I went to Sainsbury's for a meal deal, a simple quest to self-checkout. It defied me. It demanded age verification for a Red Bull.
Pretty standard procedure, mate. Did you show me your ID?
I looked the staff member in the eye and growled, the hands of death could not defeat me. The sisters of fate could not hold me in you. Will not deny me my sugar-free original flavour, boy.
Dan, you haven't even got kids. Why are you calling a 19-year-old supervisor boy?
Because, Daniel, we must be better. He asked if I had a nectar card. I told him I value only the nectar of Ewan.
Please tell me you didn't try and find a hidden chamber in the bakery section.
I may have tapped on the sourdough loaves looking for a faint blue glow, but alas, only carbs. No runic summons, no heavy runic attacks. Just a crusty roll and a sense of profound destiny.
All right, look, before they call the police to the Croydon branch for axe-related madness, let's actually talk about the game.
Sounds good, but if the mic levels peak, I'm flipping this table like it's a temple in a lake of 9.
Dan and Dan with a gaming flair, pixel dreams and worlds to share, joystick tales and button cues. Welcome to Gaming Views.
Hello and welcome to Gaming Views, actually Gaming Views this time. I'm Dan H, your host for today, and with me as always is the Mimir to my Kratos, except he's not hanging quite low by my ballsack. It's Danny P. Hello mate, how you doing?
I don't know how I'm doing. I thought I was doing well, but before we started recording, I'm all over the place.
You're a bit all over the place. I don't know what's going on. And I'm not even drinking. This is black stuff free, zero, what is it called?
The fact that you legitimately asked me if I'd been drinking before we started recording was a worry.
It should tell everyone what they need to know. It's going to be a fun one. Oh, dear.
All right. I think I'm tired.
Yeah, we're recording a day later than normal, although we've got one in the bag. But it's turned into a bit of a happy happenstance because loads of news happened today. So it's like, we don't record and go, I ain't got not much to talk about. Oh shit, no, there's news.
I love it when a plan comes together.
I love it when a plan comes together. All right, housekeeping as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you are enjoying or do enjoy at the end of this, if you get through it or we get through it, the episode, please do remember to like and subscribe. It doesn't mean a lot to you, it means the world to us. And we genuinely do value your feedback as well, because we love a bit of feedback, don't we, Dan? We love a bit of comments, commentary.
We do love feedback, yeah.
Yeah, and I even learned something new today.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I learned something new. The whole Leroy Jenkins thing was a setup, so screw that guy.
It was still funny, though.
Yeah, it was still very funny. Right, let's move along because we've got a lot to discuss today. So, as always, we will start with what we've been playing. Dan, what have you been playing?
Just a couple of things. So, I completed High on Life 2. So
very good.
Yeah, I can't remember if we'd mentioned. We did mention it in one of the episodes because we've released them out slightly out of order. Look, I enjoyed it. It was a good game. It did some really funny things. I just don't know. It just didn't grab me. I think I said it in the last episode. I don't know if it's the combat was just a bit samey.
Right.
But did I finish a game having had quite a few laugh out loud moments? Yeah. Does it do some really funny things? I think one of them, it did repeat from the first game, but look, it's a High on Life game, so you know what you're getting. I think it might be a bit more manageable. I remember the guns in the first game were quite chatty.
Yes.
I think it's slightly better now. But yeah, look, you get some really cool things, some funny throwaway jokes. And if you go looking for some of the side stuff, there's some really funny stuff that happens there. So yeah, that is done and dusted.
Nice. The question I ask myself now when I'm finished playing a different game is, would I rather have been playing Art Raiders? That's just a standard question now. If the answer is yes, it wasn't very good.
It's funny, actually. Side note, I did see a TikTok the other day where somebody said, I think I've been playing Art Raiders too much, and it was his Roomba coming into the room and he was putting the arc sound over it. You know, the alert sound.
Legend.
I started as well, Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii.
Of course you have.
Loving it. It was so it was on. It's on Game Pass.
Okay.
And I know the GCP boys had recently done it, and I think Tim loves the Yakuza games.
Right.
I played a couple when they came over to the Xbox. One, I enjoyed them, but I got bored with them in that it asks you to do quite a lot of stuff and then it just repeats it. And
Right.
I'm only probably about 3 or 4 hours into Hawaii. I'll shorten it to Hawaii. But my God, is it fun as well. It's just over the top, really colourful. It's just proper silliness. You know, it's proper silliness.
I've never played any of them, so I don't even know what the beats are.
I honestly would say play this one. Look,
Right.
I'm going to guess absolutely if you've played the others, there's going to be references, etc. But look, I've gone in and played this. It's ultimately, it's kind of like an adventure game crossed with a beat 'em up, sort of in the style of like a Final Fight. So you're going sort of from place to place. You've got there's almost like a little farming element. You've got to grow crops and stuff. So you'll love that.
I do love a little farming element. You know that, yeah.
Yeah, you come across crowds of like gangs of pirates, etc., which you've got to fight, and you can switch between fighting styles. And this one is also because it's in Hawaii. You're on the seas as well, so you've got a boat, and you can drift in the boat as well. You can
boat drift. We'll get on to drifting in weird modes of transport in a minute, but you can drift in a boat. Okay.
Yeah, you could drift in a boat. You've got boat battles, so it scratches the Assassin's Creed black flag.
Nice.
But yeah, it's just at the moment, it's just proper nonsense, and I'm loving it. So yeah, it kind of follows on from
I love a bit of nonsense
too. And having had about a week off of it, I've been pulled back into Ark Raiders in the last few days, and yeah, again, really loving it, except for the rats. And I think it's probably time to call that. So this is going to go out in a couple of weeks, but as of last night, I'd played a couple of games, and I was playing solo, and Joey jumped on from Game Club Pod, and we had a game, and yeah, there was a couple of rats took us out. And I got unreasonably angry. I didn't even have that great loot. I just was annoyed because we were getting towards the end of the level. And I think that's what annoyed me more, because it's like, I've lost a couple of things that were good for me, like an augment, but you've done this and I've not got any loot. And you and I were talking yesterday lunch, weren't we? That, look, people say you have to have that because it adds to the excitement. And I think we said, if not, I said a couple of weeks ago that I admit it does add to the tension.
Yeah.
But I also think that was it. Just gonna if I keep getting it, it's gonna push me away from the game, because it's almost like I'm just gonna get fed up with that.
It's almost the way it's done as well. Like traditional PvP, Call of Duty, things like that. You know, you go into a lobby. You know, you're going in to fight a bunch of people, whether you got a squad or whether you're doing 1v1, 2v2, whatever. And you know what to anticipate. The example for something like Ark Raiders, like the other night we went into Stella, you and I, and you were like, you need a bastion cell. So we're like, right, I know what a bastion is in this level. Let's go to the cargo bay. We'll sit there and we'll just perch up on top of the cargo bay. We'll take out the bastion. You can drop down, get the cells. We'll jog on. So I'm sitting there popping this thing. You're sitting there popping this thing. And we're just sitting there happily having a shot. And some tosser just walks up behind me while I'm shooting the bastion, obviously focused on killing it, takes me out with a snitch in the back, Stitcher in the back of the head. Just because he's standing right in front, like behind me, up close. Stitcher headshot damage is through the roof anyway, and the TTK on that thing's ridiculous when you're right that close. And I didn't even have a chance to turn around. So it was almost like he wasn't camping, but he clearly knew that people would be up there doing that, and took that moment to decide to go and take me out. And then you were the other side of a cargo thing, so you didn't even see him. And then by the time I was down, I didn't even have a chance to warn you. And then he's on you. And it's just like, there's no honour in that. Do you know what I mean? If I'm going into a raid PvP and you're shooting people and they're shooting back, fine. But just to be doing something and have someone do that is just, it's like shooting people when they're looting and things like that. It's just that.
And it was only 2 minutes into the game.
2 minutes, yeah.
I think. It was literally 2 minutes into the game.
The clock was at 27 minutes or something.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about this, and I just think they're people that they're not good enough to play Call of Duty, so they
nice. Yeah. Call them out, Dan.
My thing is, and people say, "Oh, but it's going to be boring." Then no, it's not, because one, you've got the challenge of the arc. Two, I'm trying to build everything else, so like the workbench, etc. And three, the problem with it is, and I was thinking about this, is I think the majority of people, and I'd like to think the majority of people are PvE, right? So the thing is, you're in the game, you're not even questioning, like if I see a raider running across the map, I'm like, oh, there's another raider over there. If they're looting that bit, there's probably no point me, or they've come from that, there's no point me going there. So your instinct isn't to shoot, but otherwise then might as well just camp. And isn't that the cheat code if all you're going to do is kill raiders in the hope that you can get loot from them? I mean, those are the people that aren't playing the game.
Right? You're not going up against the arc. You're not looting places. You're not risking your life against pops or flamers or fireflies or whatever, comets, whatever they are now. You're just kind of going in and going, well, I'll just kill the raider or I'll wait until he's vulnerable or she's vulnerable and then I'll do it.
It's like there was a round we'd play at the end, just the last round before I logged off last night, and Frosty is a friend of like GCP's and ours, and you'll see him in the GCP Discord. We did a trio run, and we didn't come across another raider, right? Yeah. But the amount of wasps and hornets, etc. Then I think there was a bastion roaming around. It was tense enough and difficult enough. I mean, I got downed a couple of times because I think I just got swarmed by a load of hornets. And you're in one of those. Is it the supply huts where you drop the boxes?
Yeah. Supply drop.
They're not obviously that big, and they've got three. You've got three sort of entry points where they could just target you. And I'm like, I need that bandage. So, and that was. Yeah, that had attention enough, but I'm back into Arc Raiders.
Hands in the kill box.
Yeah.
I do have to shout out. I think the trick to this is guilt, and I have to shout out Sean from TCGS. So he did his Raiders. He was doing his Raiders Thursday. I think they finished up now, but the final one he was doing a run on Spaceport with his lovely wife, and they were doing a run, and she got taken out by another raider. There were another two raiders, and they took her down. And she basically puts her proximity mic on and just starts berating the guy going, did you have to do that? Why did you do that? Have you got a stim? Can you revive me? Have you got a defibrillator? Can you revive me? And the guy literally fucking went over and revived her. And then, they'd taken out Sean as well, and they went over and revived him. And they saw him again on the map, and she started telling them off. It was brilliant. I'm like, they just guilt trip people into it.
But the thing is, right, the final thing on me, and then, come back next week to see if I'm still playing it. The final thing is, I think I'm missing out on some of the fun interactions you see online because now I just don't want to. Engage with anyone.
Don't trust them.
Yeah. So and like I said, I know there'll be a lot of people saying, "Well, boo hoo," and that's fair enough. But
there are. The standard discourse and the standard response to anyone who's saying, "Look, leave me alone, I'm doing PvE," is that you just need to get better at PvP. But the point is, I'm not interested in PvP, so why would I want to get better at it?
Yeah, and I don't think it's a game that's built around PvP. And look, and I'm not like that fully decked out with like blueprints, etc. So enjoy your like level 1 guns and
I mean, it was never designed as a PvP originally. It was as we discussed in our Arc Raiders episode, it was originally a PvE. Yeah, go check it out. It was originally a PvE only. And they introduced the idea of friendly fire to make sure that it kind of, there was that element of tension. And they, I was watching a dev interview, and the guy was saying that, they haven't got an intention of doing that, but they do want to make the lobbies slightly simpler. And even we've seen today, I'm a bit regretful that we're doing this today because I can't play the latest update. So, I can't remember what it's called. Thingy Skies. God.
Shrouded
Skies, thank you, has rolled out today, and even then they've removed some of the feats that were revolving around PvP elements. They've taken out completely. So even they're kind of conscious that they were driving people down a certain channel, even though. So it's an interesting. It'd be really interesting to see what happens with the game over the next couple of months, and certainly through the next year or so.
I think when I've had my fill of it, I think I'm just going to go in and just literally just do PvP.
Why not?
That's it. Yeah.
Why not?
And just release all those months of anger and frustration.
Yeah. I'm actually considering the next expedition at the moment. That's where I'm at the moment. I'm thinking I might even give that a go and reset and go and play through it again because I am enjoying it so much. Right, I'm not going to talk about that. Is that everything for you on what you've been playing?
But I do love the game. Yeah, that's all I played. But I do love the game.
Right, I'll let you off. We'll still be friends.
It's a great game. Yeah.
No, I won't talk about Outriders. I have been playing it a lot, but I won't talk about that because
Really?
we just spent a long time talking about it. What I have been playing though, I did pick up a game which I've been looking at for a while, but kind of didn't want to pay the asking price for it because it wasn't something I was that interested in. But it came out on Game Pass, and so I picked up Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, it's a fucking great Far Cry game.
Yeah.
It's essentially what it is. It's a really good Far Cry game. All right, you play one of the Na'vi instead of whoever you happen to be, But it's the story beats and everything are very similar to Far Cry. The survival elements and the crafting and hunting elements are all very similar. And it's clearly done by a team that knows its stuff. And it's very pretty. I mean, if you ever wanted to kind of live and breathe in that world that James Cameron created, it's perfect for that because they've done a stunning job of replicating that world. And I'm really enjoying it. I put it on for an hour or so and I was like, well, it's all right. And then I started getting into some of the elements and crafting some of the bits. And, that leads to, your essentially your power number, which is almost like your level. And then you start getting skill points and layered on top. And it actually became really interesting. So I think I ended up playing about 5 or 6 hours of it. And, mainly the main story beats. But I got to a point, like I do in every Far Cry game, where you have to be a specific level to take something on. And I was slightly underpowered and just kept getting absolutely mullered when I tried to take out this base by stealth or by, just going in overpowered. And I just kept getting wiped. So I went off and did a few side quests and they were all quite nice. There's a couple of fetch quests and standard stuff, but it's a really nice Far Cry game. So I've really enjoyed that.
The funny thing on that is I was exactly the same. I always had an eye on it, but it never had come down enough in price, I think, for it. And I've downloaded it, but I think it was a choice between that. So I'd finished High on Life 2 and I thought, do I play this or Yakuza? So I went for Yakuza. So yeah.
Which is good because otherwise we'd have a really boring conversation today, right?
We've both played Art Riders,
Art Riders or Art Life or whatever you want to call it. Art Life. So we'll have to switch over. I'll play Yakuza and you can play Far. I think you get the better end of the deal. Not Far Cry, Frontiers of Pandora, Avatar Frontiers. And then obviously yesterday Steam Next Fest dropped. So I have been gorging myself on some of the upcoming demos. Let's start with, we talked about drifting in weird modes of transport. Yeah. I've been drifting in a train in Bench Attack, which I mentioned a while back at one of it was one of the Game Awards show or something like that where they previewed it. And it was in the pre-show actually. And I said, do you know what? For me, that looked like the most exciting game of the show. And you know what? I was fucking right. It's brilliant in a mad, crazy taxi kind of way. You play a train, or a driver of a train, driving a train that is able to do stunts and tricks like a skateboard, in exactly the same sort of way. And there's a bit of, like the running games where you're forever running and you have to jump tracks and things like that to avoid obstacles and things like that. So there's a bit of that involved. And then at one point you jump off the track and get on a Ferris wheel and ride that around the world. And it's all a bit mad. And I think, it feels like, although it's only the first couple of levels, and then it unlocks the stunt park that you can continue practicing on in the demo, it does feel like there's going to be so much more to it in terms of, building up tricks and unlocking new things and new power-ups. So yeah, I look forward to that when that has a full release, but really good. So if you're on Steam and you're interested, go and check that out. It's in Steam Next Fest demo. The next one I played was Racoin, which I've played the demo we talked about before on the show, but they've got a new demo for Steam Fest Next, and it's still brilliant. This is done by the guys who brought you Balatro, and it's as addictive. It's just so good, and it's just based on the old Penny Falls machines. Yeah, and it's just so much fun, and so it's got that same combo busting, insane numbers feel as Balatro as you get through it. So yeah, again, if you have the opportunity, go and have a look at that. It's really, really good. And the last one I did decide to play. I wasn't going to, but I did decide to play the demo of Replaced, which I've spoken about before, said I was really looking forward to. And by God, it's fucking brilliant. It is so good. I'm so pleased it's so good as well, because I was so looking forward to it. And as I loaded in, I was just like, oh, am I going to be really disappointed in this? And it's quite... The pacing is quite slow. The character's quite slow moving. You know, the fight scenes are quite... they're very choreographed, but it's just the look and feel and aesthetic and kind of... It's not cyberpunk, but it's a little bit... It's kind of Blade Runner-esque. It's gorgeous, and it just plays so well. And I just really enjoyed it. It was only an hour, you know, to play through the demo. And I think it gives you a feel for certainly the basics of the game. But then I know from previews that it expands and opens up a lot more into side quests and things like that. So yeah, I am super stoked that it's coming out on Game Pass in April. But yeah, if you get a chance, check out the demo, because it is bloody brilliant. Really, really good.
I love the fact you play some demos, because it reminds me of back in the day, you know, the demo discs, etc. on magazines.
The Steam Fests are brilliant for this, especially the Steam Next Fest or Steam Fest Next. They have so much good stuff on it, and I'm still kind of hunting through for it. And what I often do is I go online and have a look at some of the websites like Polygon and things like that do this, and they'll go, you know, these are the 30 best demos, and you go, I'm going to go and try them. And there's been some real eye openers for me when I've gone in there and gone, oh, I didn't know that. And then you try it and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Balustrade was actually one of them, you know, that I tried because they'd suggested it. And you're like, yeah, you're bloody right. It is brilliant. So, yeah, that's me. That's what I'd be playing.
That's what you'd be playing.
That's what I'd be playing. Alrighty. Shall we crack on with some news?
Yes, let's.
That sounds like a good idea. Right, I think we're going to start a new weekly segment titled "What the fuck have Microsoft been up to this time?" Because it feels like every
they've been
week,
in the news, have they?
It feels like every week something goes on, and this week it's a fucking big one. And there are two sides to this story, and I'm quite interested in one, hearing your thoughts, and obviously comments from people as to their thoughts, but. So, in what was, I think, expected but also unexpected in terms of timing, Phil Spencer, head of Xbox, is retiring, as he threatened to do last year. But the reason I say it's unexpected is because that was actually supposed to announce on Monday of this week, but IGN got ahead of the story, so Microsoft had to do some putting out of fires and kind of did their press release. It was a really weird way of seeing someone who's been, you know, paramount at building Xbox into what it is for the last 12 years. And been at Microsoft for 38 years, in terms of announcing his retirement, just putting out a statement. It felt like a really weird flex. It was just like, oh yeah, he's going, you know, don't worry, he's a new person. And at the same time, Sarah Bond, who was, quite often and regularly seen as his successor, has also left, the building. Now, we're not quite sure as to why on that piece. And yeah, the new CEO of Microsoft Gaming will be Asha Sharma. And the reason that's a bit of an odd one is because she is currently and transitioning across from being the president of Microsoft's core AI product, which when I first read about this sent fucking chills up my spine, because I just thought, yeah, I think we're saying goodbye to Microsoft to Xbox. And I think there were a number of people who also felt the same way. Where's your head on this? What I know you've read a bit about it. What are you thinking?
Yes, there's a couple of things. So firstly, also what I want to say is, so we're recording this episode is going to be recorded a couple of weeks before it comes out. So there could be a lot change on this story.
Yeah, agreed.
So if you're listening, totally. So it's just to caveat that. But yeah, I'm with you. Firstly, I thought it was a bit weird, the two of them just disappearing, because it feels odd, especially for someone who's put so much into Xbox. So that felt odd.
And we should point out he's hanging around until kind of summer in a transitional role. So he's not that kind of gone, but he is effectively stepping back.
Yeah, like you as well. The fact that, you know, she's come from an AI area worried me. And look, but we've said, look, even if this hadn't happened, we know that's Microsoft is changing anyway. It's not going to be what it was sort of even last year. It's not going to be that this year or next year. A couple of things I would say though. So I've seen a lot of people saying about, Xbox or Microsoft this, Microsoft that. Let's not also forget that Sony are dabbling a lot in AI at the moment. So
totally.
we'd be crazy if we think it's just Microsoft doing this. And also, I've been, again, thinking all week. It's odd because we said, it looked like there was an heir apparent or an heiress apparent.
Yeah.
So I think that was a shock. But look, in business or, in every type of industry, the person that comes in at the top doesn't necessarily always have had direct experience in what that business is.
Not always.
Because they're coming in.
It helps.
Yeah, because they're coming in. Yeah, it helps. But they're coming in because they can steer a ship and they've got the experience of doing that. I just think where it hurts Microsoft is, as gamers, they have been, and I mean, you joked about it at the intro to the story. Microsoft have been shooting themselves in the foot and hurting themselves story after story, and this isn't a good look. Especially, which I'm sure you'll probably mention it, the whole gamer tag and the gamer score thing.
Yeah, so it's just
not
was a very interesting one.
Yeah,
no, and so what Dan's alluding to is the fact that she'd posted her kind of gamer tag and was it her achievement score? I think.
Yeah. It'd only been active a month, I think.
It had only been active a month. And in fairness, she is responding to these things. So, we have to give her a due. Basically, she said she'd only created it recently to learn and understand the world, which is fair, right? You want to, at least she's making an effort. And she'd been playing with her family on a shared home account, which is why the plethora of games were so odd. There was everything ranging from kind of Vampire Survivors through to Halo and all sorts. But then she said they fixed that now, so she's got her own one and her family have got her own one. So yeah, I mean, first of all, it does feel a bit odd that, someone who's stepping into this world feels like never even looked at an Xbox. Which is a bit weird.
Yeah.
So there's that. But then you had Seamus Blackley, who was one of the co-creators of the original Xbox, as basically interpreted this as Microsoft sunsetting the Xbox brand, and basically seeing it as a palliative care doctor who slides Xbox gently into the night. Also stating that why would you put someone in charge of a record label who didn't like records? So and
I think, and that's, and I should also say on my points that, it is also, the shocking thing is if she's not aware of what an Xbox is, that's the problem. But like I said, initially don't have to know that, she doesn't have to be the biggest of gamers to be in that position. I think it's just, as I said, I think if you put it all together, so with Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond being out, Sarah Bond looking like she was going to be the next up. Yeah. The fact that, it's not a coincidence that Microsoft are getting heavily involved in the AI with Copilot almost in everything. This is a Copilot now. I think that's going to be the tag. Yeah. I just think that Microsoft was always going on a trajectory anyway. We've been saying it week in, week out here. So if this hurries it, it might just at least silence or end those conversations, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, you'll allude to that this is an Xbox. So there's allegedly been insider talk to the press around the fact that Sarah Bond wasn't particularly well liked in her role and what she was doing. Obviously this is all conjecture, so lawyers. And the fact that the entire "this is an Xbox" was actually really despised internally at Xbox, because that wasn't ever their direction of travel. They were always true hardcore console gamers, and weren't very keen on it. And so there's been a lot of conjecture that potentially, the Sarah Bond thing was a way of almost cleaning house and kind of moving away from that and blaming a failed marketing campaign, which must have spent millions on someone and been able to clean house and go, well, Phil's stepping back, so it's fine because we don't have to do anything about that. But actually, while we're there, we can kind of clean sweep the whole thing. You know how businesses do. So there's been a lot of talk about that. And actually, the fact that Sharma coming in is actually an attempt to reinvigorate in the same way that Peter Moore did when he came in kind of the late 90s, early thousands, to reinvigorate the brand and actually drive it forward. Now, it's all been a bit odd because the messaging has been very mixed. She's very clearly been very present on social media. Sharma's been very present on social media talking about how, you know, she understands the brand. She wants to build it. She wants to, you know, get back to focusing on gamers and consoles, which all sounds amazing. And then almost in the same breath is also saying, you know, but AI has been a part of, you know, gaming for years. And you're like, yeah, I think you're confusing the fact that it's, you know, when we talk about AI in gaming, we're talking about, you know, the artificial intelligence of the people we're fighting or the enemies or the, you know, whatever it is, not the AI is the world that she's come from. So, you know, look, I don't want to patronize or put anyone down. And, you know, I think you, as you always do, you have to give someone the benefit of the doubt and say, are they going to do great things when they come in? And it could be, right? It could be fantastic.
It could be. But what I'm going to say is that if that's the way they're going, Microsoft have obviously got a direction they want to go, and they'll do that, whatever objections people raise. So yeah, I think it's a case of watch this space. But again, let's not forget the fact that, or if you think that Sony and probably Nintendo not so much at the moment because they're still munching their popcorn, but we know Sony are developing AI. We've discussed it here a couple of weeks ago. You know, I sent you another one earlier, but there's a couple of other things they're doing. Watch this space.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be really interesting. And look, I don't, you know, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I'm always one to give the benefit of the doubt. You know, maybe she will do amazing things. Maybe she will invigorate. Maybe she will listen to people. I know certain people have prompted her to listen to the community, and she said, noted, I'll absolutely do that. So look, there's hope. I personally don't have much stock in any, you know, executive of a company because the majority of them are thinking about the shareholders and not the customer. So, you know, let's see where we go. And the story about the AI piece with Sony was basically about this soft pause that this patent that they've got, which is basically rather than pausing a game and going off to do something, you would essentially let the game take over and play for you while you're off doing whatever it is you're doing, which sounds good on paper. And yet I will remind you last week of the AI that decided it hated someone's decision so much it went and wrote a blog about them. So I'm not sure what the game would do. I think if I was playing Ark Raiders and went off to do something else, it might just end up, you know, massacring the entire, you know, Speranza while I'm away.
Your play style of PvE is far too ineffective. Let's go on a rampage. I can never get out of PvP lobbies.
All right. Alrighty. So that was, our regular segment. What the fuck are Microsoft doing this week? Okay, good. Right. Let's move on to Sony. So naughty Sony have decided that they are shutting down or have shut down one of their very prolific studios that went after primarily remakes, and that is Bluepoint. Now, this is disappointing on many levels. So they did the Demon Souls remake, which people will, particularly, you know, Joey and the crew will be very fond of. They did some other ones as well. Shadow of the Colossus, which I played, you know, as a remake, was just a work of art. I mean, they took that game and just made, you know, and it was brilliant for its day, don't get me wrong, but was sublime when they remade that. They were also involved, which helps on this episode, in co-developing God of War Ragnarok. So, and then due to that work, they were actually working on a live service God of War game. And if you want to know more about live service, go and watch the episode on live service, which I'll also link to here. God, we've covered them all, Dan. That wasn't even intentional. So that game was cancelled back this time last year, unfortunately. But they were looking to what Bluepoint could work on next, and instead of deciding that, they kind of put them through the chopper. So shit, to be honest. So Microsoft aren't the only ones who do this.
No, and the only thing I was going to add to that, so again, it's, you know, obviously for the people involved in that, hope they find something quickly. But it was something I was thinking, and also, and I don't know if he's listening. So Luke from the Nostalgic in a chat we've got going said the similar thing, in that if it was Microsoft shutting the studio, the pitchforks are out and everyone is on news. But Sony seemed to, again, we've said before that they seem to get a little bit of leeway with certain things. And look, they're not doing this every other week, right? And they're not, you know, they're not literally buying them to shut them down. But yeah, it's, you know,
and they haven't replaced the top dog with AI either, so, you know.
Yet, yeah. yeah. But yeah, no, yeah, just obviously hope people involved sort of get something quick.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always appalling when this thing's happening. There's some really talented people clearly at that studio alone. So, you know, and I know you're going to talk a little bit more about something else, but let's move on from a studio shutting down to one coming back, which is I am stoked about, and I know you are too. So the developer of one of our favourite games, and thank you again, Joey, for buying this for me for Christmas. So Prototype 1 and 2, Simpsons Hit and Run, which was much loved and a massive cult classic, and The Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction, which was based on the Prototype engine. Radical Entertainment are coming back. So they've spun up a new studio, you've got a shiny new website. There's a lot of speculation about what they might be working on.
Simpson Hit and Run remastered.
Oh my God, yeah. Or Prototype remastered. Now, Prototype remastered's been rumoured for a while now, so it would be great to see that come up at some point. But yeah, they basically, I think what they're doing at the moment, they've basically stated they're available immediately to take on full game, metaverse or real-time VFX projects, that involve either the full development, co-development, remastering efforts, ports or any other kind of endeavor. It would be amazing to see these guys get into something and pick something up, because, you know, I loved their previous work. I loved Prototype. I loved Prototype 2. You know, they were a game, very much games of their age. Yep. But I played, you know, Joey, like I said, bought me that for Christmas, and I was playing it and still having tons of fun with it. So yeah, I'm super stoked if this works out for the guys.
The thing about Prototype is I'm thinking back to it because obviously I've not played it for years, but it felt like you can almost see where like the Spider-Man games have got their vibe from, because, you know, it was those high-rise buildings, you know, climbing up them, because you could run up them. Once you powered up, couldn't you? You could literally run up the side of buildings. And,
so, well, even right at the beginning, you could do that.
Was it right at the beginning?
So, you kind of start off doing it, and then you have a flashback. So then you go back in time to when you started off. So yeah, you start off at the beginning and overpowered, and then you have to build your powers again. So
they were just fun open world, powerful games, weren't they? Or powered games.
Absolutely. Yeah. I loved all of that. And thank you very much for that other brilliant link about Insomniac Spider-Man, because my final piece of news from me today, well done, Dan. You did very well there without knowing it. Insomniac news just in have officially revealed the release date for Wolverine. So excited, man, because it's coming this year. And I think we always rumoured it was coming this year, but it's not only coming this year, it's coming this year in September, on September the 15th, which puts it 2 months ahead of the other big game this year, which I can't remember what it is. It's something about killing people or prostitutes or something. But there's another big game out in November that I'm not going to talk about. But Wolverine is out on the 15th of September, and I cannot wait. Looks so good.
Yeah. That's good. So I think I said to you that what we've been playing will be easy for you in September. So you just need to get that footage ready.
Yeah, the Art Raiders and Wolverine. Right. Dan, what news have you got for us this week?
I'll kind of blitz through these. I'll start with the not so good ones. So yeah, just almost to follow on from kind of your Blue Point Studios one. So Ubisoft have got further redundancies they're doing. So they're laying off around 40 people at Ubisoft Toronto. So this is a studio behind the upcoming remake of Splinter Cell. Now, this is separate to the news we had a couple of weeks ago where they did all sorts of cuts and shutting games down. But this is around 8% of the studio's headcount. And it's all in a drive to save costs by 200 million euros over the next 2 years. So, you know, if you think there was up to 200 people in Paris, you've now got 40 people in Toronto. And, you know, look, whatever you think of them, Ubisoft are one of those classic studios. You know, they've given us a lot of entertainment over the years. And it's just that whole thing, isn't it? Restructuring, costing, and AI, potentially, no doubt.
Well, we always thought they were done with it because they'd obviously restructured into these houses that they were now using for specific titles. So we kind of thought, well, you've probably had the last of it from Ubisoft. And then they go ahead and go, oh, here's one more thing, and drop another studio. And it's like, fuck, Matt, dude, stop.
Yeah. The thing is, the only other thing I'll say about this story is that Splinter Cell is not one of the 3 flagship series I think that you you went into at the time, identified by Ubi management as being potential billionaire brands.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is from Rock Paper Shotgun. So they're surmising that as such, Splinter Cell potentially are at more risk of being canned. Yet we've still potentially got Beyond Good and Evil 2 that's been in development for like 15 years.
So random, man. So random. Such a weird flex to do that. I don't get it.
Yeah. So again, to those people at Ubisoft Toronto,
best of luck,
if it happens, best of luck. The next is one, and I'm bringing it up because I'm a bit worried about it. And you kind of put me at ease a little bit at lunch yesterday, but it's about the Steam Deck. And this is from PCWorld.com, and I'm annoyed at them in the sense
Screw those
of
guys, man. Screw those guys.
Yeah, they've got an article that's from their senior editor. Is titled,
Screw that guy. That's what I meant.
Well, it says, "Hear me out. I'd rent Valve's Steam machine." And basically, the whole, I'm not going to go into it, but the whole thing is talking about obviously the potential delay and the price increase. You know, they're saying, why not rent it? And, you know, we spoke, if it wasn't last week, the week before, about the whole of the kind of tech world seems to be moving towards you won't own anything.
Yeah.
And you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's,
rent a PlayStation, rent a Steam machine, rent an Xbox. I don't need to rent an Xbox.
Rent all the games you'll be playing on it. No, I want a Steam machine, and if it has to be delayed because of current AI demands, then delay it. But the whole renting thing, I don't want it.
Yeah, hear me out. I'd rent a Steam machine. Hear me out. I'd give that guy a slap.
Yeah. So Steam again.
I'm not doing that.
I really want the Steam Deck. If you'd like to send this one, let us know. We'll review it. But
just ask for our address and be fine. Don't need to let us know.
I would rather, like I said, if they have to delay it, then delay it. But give us the option to buy.
Totally agree.
And the final story is weird. I'm going to skip. So it's from Kotaku. The first half of it is literally, I guess it's setting a scene, but I'm going to skip that. The crux of the story is that gaming, they're not sure if the gaming industry is ready for what comes next. And by that, it's saying that even though there's such a big player base, people are buying fewer games. And I think we've kind of said this before, and they're kind of looking into it and, you know, saying, why is this the case? Yeah. And I'm just... because obviously I've been moving all my screens around and I've lost it. But I think they're saying that ultimately, you know, people are playing older games. You know, they're playing the same games. You know, look at the live service games, which we did last week, that they're hooking us like Ark Raiders. You know, you'll probably be playing that sort of in a year or two, right?
Maybe.
So it's here we go. So it's so this article was written at the time when Xbox announced the departure and replacement with reps from the AI wing of the company, and it's just all about player trends. They say, why, when the population has never been more immersed in gaming, with even a third of octogenarians hitting Candy Crush, is success so sluggish? Impassioned fans from European rail sim lovers to Latin fighting game communities make do even when the larger industry doesn't provide. So it's that basically. It's something we've said, and I guess there's also an element of, as you get older, you get less time to play, so you go back to your old faithfuls.
Yeah.
But it's interesting what they're saying, that if we are buying less games and we are just focusing on a handful of genres, you can maybe... I'm not saying it's right, but you can maybe see why some companies are making some of these sweeping decisions, because they're saying, well, we're just going to follow the current trend. But it's in a self-fulfilling cycle, right?
Well, like I said, they're focused on the bottom line and on the shareholders, and not focused on the consumer and what they're actually asking for, as we discussed in our live service one. You know, it's a shitty position to be in, because you just kind of want to harken back to the heyday of the last, what was it, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when it felt like you were the important part of the puzzle when, in terms of game making and what people were bringing out and what they were doing. And now it just seems to be, how can I suck as much cash out of the consumer as possible, whether it's through live service or, extortionate costs of games, or, when we know, when we spoke about in our Street Fighter episode, they made that game for what would be considered pittance now. And look how much money it made. So it's possible, and it still does happen. But just, the big corporations have got their arms around this stuff now. Microsoft buying up every developer and their mum, and
Look, I think there's a lot more things vying for people's attention now as well, isn't there, with smartphones and social media, etc. So there's a lot more. But I do think that companies are probably latching onto certain, statistics will tell you what they want, right?
Yeah.
But, if you look out on social media, if you speak to people still want those big, awesome, even single player games. So we have this conversation every certain, sort of every 5 years or so, every cycle. But it just feels like, though, maybe live service is also helping people fall into just playing one or two games and just dabbling elsewhere. So, keep watching this space.
Oh, low roll nonsense.
Yeah.
Right. What's up next, Dan? We'll do an advert today.
So there's another advert, but before we do, I just want to see, can you hear this? Can you hear that? It's a drum roll.
Hear that.
Right, okay. Right. So there is one final news story I want to do, and I've kept this deliberately vague because I didn't want to see your reaction to it. But the news story is that today's your birthday, Dan.
Oh, fuck it.
So the day this episode goes out, my very, very good friend here, Dan H, has a special birthday. And I'm sure you've mentioned it before, Dan, but do you want to say how old to everyone listening, how old you are today?
I am 25 today.
Yeah.
So, I'm 50.
Plus VAT. Plus VAT and everything. Look, so Dan, if I've timed this right, which I'm sure we have, Dan, you are 50 today. So firstly, a massive happy birthday from me.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate
Thank
that.
you again for doing this with me.
I love it.
You are a superb friend. And I did have a couple of other ads to play, but it might be on a certain theme. So let's hear the first one.
Hey Dan, it's your best friends here, Joey from the Game Club Pod, and
Oi, oi, how you doing? It's Griffin over at Reboot, Deboot, and Major Tunage.
we just wanted to stop by and say happy 50th birthday. I can't quite believe it's 50. You don't look a day over 30.
It's true, and we hope that there's 50 more.
50 more on top of that as well.
And 50 more on top of that. We hope that you have 50 songs that you love. We hope that you have 50 titles of movies and entertainment that you love. 50 years worth of fun and enjoyment coming your way, Dan.
Very happy birthday to you, mate. Here's to 200 years by our calculations.
Oh, bless.
So that was Joey from the Game Club Pod and Griffin from Reboot Deboot. But we've got another ad, Dan.
Not another ad.
Hey Dan, Satsu from Chatsunami here. Just to wish you a very happy 50th birthday. Hope you have a fantastic day. Oh, and in case you're wondering how I found out, a certain podcaster that rhymes with ham from Blaming Shoes told me. Of course, I'm sure you'll never guess that one. Have a brilliant day.
And
bless him.
Thank you, Satsu, for that. And there's one more ad to play, Dan. Here we go.
Go on then.
Hi, Dan H. It's Raging Rich
and T.A. Shalano here
from the Middle Age Podcast.
You were a guest on here in season 5, where you were talking about you're going to be nearly 50, and now it's here.
Yeah, we just wanted to say have an absolutely fantastic birthday.
Yeah, 50. All the best to you, and happy birthday.
Have a good one.
Yeah, so Raging Rich and T.A. Shalano from the
little
podcast,
legends. Thank you very much. There wasn't a video with Joey's one, was there?
No, it's the way he sent it No, it's the way he sent that. That's why I was a bit worried at the start. Remember when I told you to leave the recording studio because Dan doesn't know this.
Am I supposed to be reacting to the video because I can't see them?
No, there wasn't.
Look, gentlemen, thank you very much. It's very much appreciated, and I'm honoured to have been a part of your crew doing this podcasting since Dan stupidly invited me on, and then realised how much I swear. But thank you very much. That's meant the world to me. That's lovely. I was welling up there. Thank you, Dan, and thank you.
No, happy birthday, bud. So for anyone listening, those three, because they're ones you've collabed with. So, Joey's been on here, and I know obviously he does the gaming, and Satsu and the podcast, you've been on there. So that's why I reached out to them. So thank you, Tim. Yeah, and one more time, Dan, bloody happy birthday to you.
Thank you, mate. It's weird because it's like 2 weeks away, but thank you very much for my birthday, which is in 2 weeks. So now I'm officially 2 weeks. I'm like the Queen.
And now you know why. So also, as Dan's hosting this episode, normally the person who's hosting creates a studio for recording, but I couldn't let you do that.
You couldn't.
So I said, I've just gone on and done it for you, Dan, because I'm really helpful like that. But yeah, send in your birthday messages to Dan. So
very much appreciate it. Thank you. And that there is no actual ad, is there? No.
That
was okay, good. I was messed up. Oh, mate, that's very sweet of you. Thank you very much.
Carry on hosting. You've still got work to do. So.
Well, actually, I was going to say, as a little birthday treat to myself, I've decided that today's episode was going to be all about God of War because I fucking love God of War. And I'm really pleased that you now fucking love God of War because it is awesome. So I thought we'd spend the rest of the episode, however long it takes, talking about that very topic. So, God of War. I wanted to start with a little bit. So God of War turned 20 last year. We just missed it because I think
birthdays.
All these birthdays. I think it was quite early last year, so we wouldn't have been casting then. So we missed it unfortunately. But 20 years old. And even when I saw that, I was like, did it? Are you sure your numbers are right? It doesn't feel like a 20-year-old franchise. So God of War obviously started with the Greek tragedy, the Greek trilogy, tragedy trilogy. It's all of the above. But I wanted to start with some numbers. I wanted to do you a service, Dan, because you always have some cracking numbers. So I wanted to start with a few numbers. So this is a game that has quite a significant commercial dominance, with 76.5 million units sold.
Yeah.
And the Norse saga alone generated over $1.4 billion. And remains PlayStation's most profitable brand, that's something, right? I mean, not many people talk about it in those terms.
Yeah.
But PlayStation's most profitable brand is incredible.
Because it's kind of, I'm not going to say, look, it's an unknown. I'm not saying that at all. But when you think about these franchises on PlayStation, people will go to The Last of Us. People will talk about Uncharted, people will talk about Spider-Man now. And look, God of War is mentioned, but I just don't think people will necessarily recognise what you've just said because that wouldn't necessarily, I think, be somebody's first or even second franchise they talk about.
Totally. And I know it was significantly reinvigorated in 2018 with God of War, and that alone raked in 623 million of that number, and then Ragnarok was the other 850 million. So it's done a huge amount in that short 20 years, in fairness, for a franchise, particularly one that stemmed so many titles. But it all started back in the day in 2005 with the start of the Greek tragedy and the Greek saga, which was Kratos' God of War 1. Which essentially didn't even start at the beginning of the story. So he was already God of War, and this is where the kind of, we jump a bit around. So let's talk a little bit about how that plays out. So it actually starts, if you want to do this in sequence, with God of War Ascension, which is set at roughly 6 months before Kratos, who is a sea captain, is tricked into killing his wife and daughter. And in this game, he is basically imprisoned by the Furies for breaking his blood oath with Ares, after he's tricked by Ares into killing his family. So then he escapes, kills the Furies, and begins his kind of journey on. And we then have Chains of Olympus, which again was another prequel, but set during 10 years of his service to the gods, where he's sent to stop the world from falling into eternal darkness after Morpheus puts the gods to sleep. And he's forced to choose between staying with his deceased daughter in the Elysian fields or saving the world. And he chooses the latter because he's really a good guy at heart. Which then further fuels his, the fact that he despises the god and his hatred for the gods. We then come to, and these games were made up post this, we then come to 2005's God of War, where Kratos is tasked by Athena to kill Ares. This is where he gets his revenge. So in the game, he retrieves Pandora's box to gain the power of a god, and he eventually ends up, spoiler alert, he ends up killing Ares and becomes the titular God of War. And if you're wondering why he's, a bit pasty, because he's a little bit pasty, is actually the ashes of his family that are on his skin. So I love
incredible story.
I love this whole thing, and the thing about God of War, and the thing about that I love most about it, is when you look back at, the actual Greek tragedies and stories from before, all of these things, you're kind of like, it could have been written then. Do you know what I mean? It was done so well that it could actually have been a story from those times in terms of how it spun out. It's just such a fascinating game.
The thing for me, sorry to interrupt, the thing for me, so the only other game I'd played was, I think, Chains of Olympus on the PSP, because I briefly had a PSP and I had that. What I'll say is, look, and I'm not an expert shocker in either Greek mythology or Norse mythology. I've dabbled. No, I've dabbled. Sorry, is that why I got the gig? Yeah. Is that why I got the gig? But especially the two Norse games, it feels like it's been done with a love of wanting to be as faithful or to bring, to not just say, okay, right, we're going to set it in Greek or Norse mythology. It's like they've wanted to do it justice, and that's what I like. What I've liked about the recent games.
100%. And that's the thing. And we will get to those, because that, obviously the amount of thought and the amount of, effort that was gone into telling those stories and tying them into a different mythology, which is another fascinating way to do these things, is kind of skip from one mythology like the Greek piece into another one. Now, obviously they had a plethora of, monsters, enemies, foes to pick from in the Greek pantheon, and they did. You had plenty of Cyclops you pulled eyeballs out of and things like that. In the Greek one, and then you had to move that, but then you had a new world to pick from, essentially. So there were lots of leadership transitions during the cycle of these games. There's been lots of things. So obviously the creator of the franchise, David Jaffe.
Jaffe.
Well, he's not cake, so Jaffe. So he directed the first game in 2005, and he set that kind of brutal, epic tone. And if you've not played the games, please go and have a go, especially at the first one, because I think at the time, and certainly for me, it was unlike anything else I'd played in that kind of genre. That, it was mad. The Chains of Olympus and the whole thing. How you moved around levels, how you got into fights, the QTEs, which I think both of us have said we don't really enjoy, but in those games, they just added something new and different. You felt it, all those visceral moves and finishing moves you felt a part of because of them. It was just such a, I know you haven't played as much the original ones as I have. David Jaffe has kind of set the tone for it. But then in God of War 2 with, and I'm just conscious that Ghost of Sparta slots in nicely between those two. But God of War 2, Zeus essentially is, as a story beat, is afraid that Kratos will overthrow him because of his power. So he betrays him and kills him. And it's your journey climbing out of Hades to join force with the Titans, obviously the fathers of the gods, and traveling back in time to use the Sisters of Fate to prevent his own death, and then have this full scale attack on Mount Olympus. So this was taken over by, Cory Barlog, who became almost synonymous with, the game post, God of War 2. He kind of went through and refined the narrative scope of the game. He refined the combat. He kind of made tweaks and changes to this. So this is all still on PlayStation 2, I think. And then he led the initial development of God of War 3, which was seen as the finale for the Greek era, where Kratos essentially goes through and assassinates every single Greek god. I think it's Poseidon, Hades, Helios, Hermes, Hera, and Zeus. He had a thing for gods with H.
Yeah.
And then which causes the world to collapse into chaos. And then he realizes that Pandora's box contained hope, and he releases that to humanity, and then takes his own
causes
life.
the world to descend into chaos. Is Kratos running around at the moment?
I'm wondering if he's running the US. Yeah, I'll take that back. Allegedly. So Corey Barlog only oversaw the first 8 months of development of that on the PS3 before handing the reins over to Stig Asmussen.
Easy for you to say.
Easy for me to say. And then Ascension, which we talked about briefly earlier, was directed by Todd Pappy. There were lots of, interestingly, on God of War, lots of technical challenges and hurdles they had to come, because they were in that stage of the evolution of hardware. And we know that, so we've talked about before in our Sony episodes how, the technology was evolving quite quickly, and developers were trying to keep up. And that leap into the PlayStation 3, certainly that, the Xbox 360 versus PS3 thing, we talked about how, the Xbox was simpler for developers and so easier to get their hands around. So this is a great example of a game series that really had to keep up with the development cycle and the way that the PS3 was developing to really accelerate what God of War 3 could bring to the table. So there's a sequence in God of War 3, which is the Helios decapitation. And that took an entire year to design and develop. Wow. So, there were lots of moving parts, but to take an entire year for one sequence in a game, and that sequence can't last more than a minute. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a massive piece. So it's just quite scary that something, well, not scary, but it's quite fascinating that something can take that long.
Yeah. But again, it just shows, we've said it before with something else. Oh, it was Claire Obscure, right? And look, it's probably a different time, but look, crunch and deadlines were a thing then as well, but let developers with a passion for something do what they want to do and reap the rewards. Do you know what I mean?
Give them the time and space.
Yeah, what was it? What was that for God of War 2, did you say?
That was 3. Helios decapitation was 3, yeah.
So 2010, so they're still making them 16 years later, so it wasn't a bad move, right?
No, totally not. I think the difference between God of War and God of War 2 was minimal. Obviously, like we talked about the refined combat and kind of, tweaking the stories and things like that. But God of War 3 was a whole new world for them because it was brand new. So they had to swap from a PS2, which was a slightly better version of the PS1 with a few new components, to a PS3, which had its own specific renderers, its own particle systems, its own collision systems. So, a very different step up in terms of visual fidelity for things like, when you look at Killzone and games like that, how they move through. There's a very famous Killzone, volumetric fog demo from E3 that never transpired and things like that. So all of these things, great leaps in technology that the God of War 3 developers were having to keep up with at the time. So, I think it's just fascinating that, there were these technical advances while developing these games that you don't really hear about very often. You just kind of go in and play the game. And God of War, 1, 2, and 3 specifically were incredibly brutal. And it's got, one of my fondest gaming memories. One that lingers with me. I wouldn't say if I'm fond of it because of what I did, but I was playing. There's a very famous sequence, and I can't remember if it's God of War 3 or 2. It's the lift sequence, and those that have played it will know the sequence. And you're ascending on a lift, and as you're ascending, more and more enemies are dropping in. That old trick that developers do.
Yeah.
But it gets to the point where it gets frustratingly hard. I destroyed 2 PlayStation it might have been 2, maybe, but I destroyed 2 controllers by launching them across the room. And I'm quite lucky because one of them hit some double glazing and broke the controller rather than the window. That's how angry it made me. And I've never ever done that with any other game. I've slammed the controller down in frustration, but I never launched one. And 2 of them I broke because I couldn't do it. And I'm pretty sure, and I'll have to look this up. I'm pretty sure it was recognised and fixed in a subsequent patch that ironically came out just after I did it. Like I finished it. So I did do God of War, Dark Souls type games. They just happened to be God of War.
Yeah. You probably realise you should have moved a bit further to stop the spawning of enemies or something.
No, well, you were kind of a fixed screen, and it was just the elevator was going, and things were dropping in, and it was like, why have I got 2 Cyclops to defeat now? And why have I got?
It is a shame when good games kind of do something that can spoil it ever so slightly like that, isn't it? It is a shame. But
that whole thing stuck with me as a memory and gone, God, I did that on that God of War game. And it was, for those of you who remember the lift sequence, please tell me your stories because, it was a point of frustration.
And how many controllers did you smash?
Yeah, exactly. But also, I mean, I just remember, that game and, when you see the scale and size and how they scaled out where at moments you'd be running around, tiny around this screen. And then suddenly you'd see this massive god, picking you up in his hand, or the world turning over, or you, ascending Mount Olympus was another phenomenal, set piece. They just all this grandeur to the entire game around these set pieces that it was built around. And to tie all of those in with famous stories from mythology like Prometheus and, it was just, and Sisyphus and all this, it was just brilliant. I just, hats off to those guys and that series, that part of the series of games, because I really enjoyed the Greek trilogy. I really enjoyed it at the time. It was, and like we said about Prototype, it was very much a game of its moment. And I have high hopes for the remakes, which were recently announced at Sony's State of Play. Go and watch our episode on that as well, if you like. But yeah, so, Sony's State of Play, they've obviously announced that they are remaking the original trilogy with the original voice of Kratos coming back. He was very excited about that. Yeah. And we also had the God of War Sons of Sparta, which is now the official prequel to the prequel, which is a 2D Metroidvania, which fills the gaps between Kratos and his brother Deimos, who also appears in one of the games, and depicts their brutal training at the Spartan Agog. So, I haven't played it. I haven't seen it. I joked about playing it. I haven't played it. I'm not willing to pay the money for it, and especially not with the scores it's got at the moment. And I'm pretty sure David Jaffa had something to say about that, which you mentioned in our episode. Yeah, he was not a happy boy.
He was not on board, let's say that. What was say about the remakes? I think I said it in our episode, The State of Play. Yeah, in a world of remakes, I think these ones make sense, and what I'm really hoping for is they come to the PC, which I'll be able to play on my Steam Deck, because obviously the recent ones. But the reason being is, like I said, as someone who has only played one installment 18 years ago on the PSP, and then the new ones, and then looking up, because I wanted to know a little bit about the backstory to the game, just being fascinated by it and loving the amount of lore that's gone into it. And I think players should be able to play these games. And, the fact that, because look, I don't know exactly how the back compat works on PlayStation, but obviously Xbox games go back to almost to the OG one. Yeah. It just feels like these games should be available for modern gamers to play, because the modern two are just so good that the backstory, I think, deserves to be seen and played.
Agreed. I totally agree, and I cannot wait to see them. And I almost hope they reimagine them in the same way. Do you know what I mean? Rather than doing the reimagining that they've done from 2018, I hope that they just take what was great and just make some quality of life improvements, because there was some stuff on that was fucking awful to play, like in terms of like how, some of the combat. When you think back to it now, at the time it made sense, but now it's like we've had so many innovations. I genuinely hope they kind of remake them in the same vein as they were meant. And then, because I would happily go and buy those and play those. I'm going to have a look and see if the original God of War games are actually on the back catalogue for Sony PlayStation, because, I might, it feels like a great excuse to pick up the Portal and play those games on the Portal, because that would be phenomenal. So I might come back next week and say I've been playing them.
But for the PC market, which hopefully they, like I said, they would come, but you can't play those, just like you can't play the first 3 Uncharted games either. Yeah. Because of... So, I'm all on board for these remakes. Look, even if I don't get to play them because they're on PlayStation only, look, it's all about games, right? I still think this is a great move to remake these.
Agreed. Right, we will move on to the Norse reimagining in a second, but do you want to hear some useless facts about the original God of War?
I would love to.
Oh, you might. So, Kratos' iconic design was originally sketched on a napkin during a lunch between David Jaffa and the lead artist. They wanted a white-skinned warrior with a contrasting tattoo, but the red colour was a late-stage pivot. Do you know why?
No.
Okay, so just weeks before the game's 2004 reveal, the year before it came out, his tattoos were in fact blue. And they were changed to red at the last minute because the developers realised the blue tattoos made him look too much like the barbarian class from Diablo 2.
Brilliant.
It's amazing how these things work, isn't it?
This is what I was going to say. We've said this before. I love where certain ideas come from. The fact that this was... I know we look too similar to Diablo. Let's change it, and it's iconic, right? It's the red markings are just so iconic.
They are, and they make him who he is. You can't really see it on my screen behind me, but he's got Kratos pulling a smiley face to everyone. Another interesting fact, or at least an Easter egg. So one of the most famous running gags in God of War is the eternal boat captain. So he lets him die in the first game to get a key. And he then appears as a soul in God of War 2. He's mentioned in God of War 3, and he gets a treasure map callback in 2018's Norse entry, and then gets a codex entry in Ragnarok. So he's in every game possible, which was quite amusing. And just finally for the original trilogy, so in the original 2005 game, if you destroyed 2 statues in the throne room at the end, it revealed a phone number, and if you called it, you get a pre-recorded message of Kratos congratulating you on your victory.
Probably at only £3 an hour, or £3 a minute.
Exactly,
Sorry, £3 a minute.
Different type of phone line, Dan. Different type of phone line. All right, so God of War, the Greek tragedy. We love you. I'm going to go back and see if I can pick that up and play with that again and see where we go. We've spoken about the remakes and Sons of Sparta. Not played it, but probably won't. Let's move on to the Norse reimagining, because I know this is where very recently for you, certainly your history really begins with God of War. So it was a massive switch from moving from this Mediterranean Greek setting to essentially to Midgard, to Norse mythology, and to transition from this kill everyone and everything to being a dad. Essentially what happened, right? He went from I'm going to kill everything to boy. So a real interesting. And what is even... No, let's do this first. Dan, thoughts, because I've got another interesting fact that just still completely bewilders me when I hear it.
Well, 2 things on this. Firstly, look, and games have done this as well. I mean, even like Assassin's Creed, right? You were Altair, then you did the whole Ezio thing, then you've done Black Flag. Yeah. But the way they've kind of switched, because I think mythologies like Greek mythology and Norse mythology are so iconic and also so different that I love the fact that you've taken him from one world and put him into the other. I don't think at the time you possibly could have imagined that, but I just think it works and it's so brilliant.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, look, I approached the game expecting it to be a lot more of a just an action game. Like I am tough man. I'm going to smash everything that gets in my way. I don't think I was prepared for actually how emotional the story gets.
Completely.
The beats of it, you know, I mean, look, not having kids myself, I think if you've got kids, there's, you know, you could probably relate to some of the themes in it a bit more. But I just don't think I was not, when I say not ready, I just don't think I was expecting the depth to the story. Yeah. And I came away from it thinking, wow, especially when I completed Ragnarok, I thought, wow, it's almost like cats in the cradle, isn't it, kind of thing? Because Atreus obviously sort of is going off to do his own thing, and it's like, yeah, I did it a misservice when I just thought I was just going to get a smash the X button to smash the opponents.
That's the leap. We'd come from that world of God, and your only experience with that was, like you said, on the PSP, and having that, and then going through that to I like to look at it as the Greek saga was a story of revenge. You know, he was going through trying to take revenge in what he felt was the best way possible on, you know, for the death of his family, being tricked into killing them, on the gods who he saw as, you know, the ultimate evil, to a story of redemption, to a story of having a second chance and not wanting to blow it, basically.
Yeah. Well, there's also grief in this, right? Because it starts off with, obviously, and also sort of like how him, who is a warrior, and whilst obviously loving his son, it's obviously an awkward relationship at the start, you know. Yeah. But you realise, because again, you start thinking, oh, is it a cliche? His son isn't as warrior-like as him, but it's the other way. It's almost like he's trying to tell his son, what I was isn't who I want to be. Yeah. And don't you do the same thing? I really, and look, and the other thing I've also remembered is that, you know, we discussed it on here in one of our episodes as well about sort of marketing plots that go wrong, you know. So when Sony at the time, it was God of War 2, wasn't it? Marketed it with that debauch, like sort of
goat's head,
goat's head, etc.
Semi-naked ladies, and
I think that then just kind of you kind of know what you think you're getting, or you think you know what you're getting. Whereas, like I said, the Norse 2 for me completely spun that assumption on its head.
Completely. And look, so for those of you unaware, and I won't go into too much of spoiler territory, but basically this is many years later, an older Kratos now lives in Midgard with his son Atreus, and following the death of his second wife, Faye, they journey to the highest peak in the realms to scatter her ashes. And what I love about this is it's basically God of War, the road trip. That's what the first one is. You know, it's the first one in the Norse saga. It's these two, you know, a young, essentially a teenager coming into manhood, and his dad going on a road trip, and he's, like you say, his dad trying to teach him the error of his ways, and kind of going, well, don't make the same mistakes that I made.
But it starts off almost though trying to fit the cliche, because obviously Atreus is a lot smaller, it's a lot more slight. And you see Kratos being quite angry at times, and you think, oh, it's because he's not proud of his son, but it's almost like his son isn't a warrior like him. And I was thinking anyway, is that the way the story is going to go?
To keep him out of it. The thing that always blows my mind about this, and I forget it, and then when I reread it, and I go, oh, fucking yeah, of course, the entire thing is shot with a single shot camera. The entire game, end to end. And it's just mind blowing. This one shot camera with, and it was a philosophy from the start that there would be no cuts. And it was seen as a bit of a gimmick, but it helped keep the player physically and emotionally attached to Kratos, because you were never removed from him to watch a cutscene or see something else happen. And to achieve that we talk about shows like, what was it? Adolescence had a single shot, you know, and we talk about these things where you see these things, you know, and don't get me wrong, amazing, right? But the way they create video games is very similar. You have a fixed camera or you have a movable camera. To achieve that how long does it take you to finish the game? 30 hours, something like that?
Yeah, I'd say easy 20 plus, upwards of 20. Yeah.
To achieve that in that kind of span of time, with everything you have to think about, every angle, every action, every interaction, every set piece, to have that single shot is just mind blowing.
I hadn't picked that up at the time, but now you've said it, I can see it Do you know? I can now see it, and it's a shame that you didn't, or not you, but like I didn't appreciate that. But yeah, it is very continuous. Yeah, like you said, it doesn't take you out the action. Yeah,
no, it's incredible, and then just blows my mind every time I see it. And we have to acknowledge that clearly in 2018, these the developers are playing with a lot more power than they were before, in terms of the PS5 and PS4. They had a lot more toys to play with, a lot more power to play with. So these things would never have been possible previously. But the switch up of the way the game played, the way it introduced RPG like elements into the game, and the way that combat evolved from being quite one note, heavy attack, light attack, to being what it is in God of War, which is a lot more, it's almost a parry block system, with a lot more, there's a lot more elements in it that make the combat super fun. I mean, I love the fact that, the axe is just such a great, because you don't start off with your chains, you start off with the axe, and that in itself, that kind of power to recall, one makes for some amazing puzzle elements in that game, but also makes the combat incredibly fun. And when I was playing Doom Dark Ages, it reminded me a lot of that, the fun elements of that with the shield, where you're throwing out stunning things and bringing them back. I love that. Look, tell me about your experience with it, because you obviously, the first game, certainly God of War, you played it, and I know you really enjoyed it. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I just think, like I said, I just wasn't expecting it to be as full a rounded adventure as it was. I mean, I thought it was going to be a fairly linear story, just chug along in the game. But, there is so much in the game that I haven't done, because there are so many collectibles. There's probably a lot of side missions as well I haven't done. The fact that you get the boat and then that opens up, certain things.
I love the boat. Yeah, I just love that element.
Well, that's the moment where they're almost having like the little conversations between each other, but they're not just throwaway lines. They're more lore about Norse mythology, etc. The voice acting, I think I've said in an episode, I say every voice in the game is acted brilliantly. So that's great. I think the music is great. Like you said, some of the set pieces, the introduction of the characters, so all your Norse greats are in there. And so when they come in, you're just waiting for that next one. The graphics, I've said, even on Steam Deck, like low settings, still look stunning. The frosty, the snowbound levels when you're climbing that mountain at the end with the ashes. I don't think, if I had to be really picky and say the negative I had, it would be that it was just a little bit too much of what some might say is a filler stuff. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to.
Totally. And but I'm a sucker for that stuff. I love all of that, those elements. I think, for me, the two standouts, other than obviously, in terms of voices and acting, other than Kratos and Atreus, who were great, was Mimir and Baldur, because I think they were just so well done.
Especially
Mimir is just such a great addition. I mean, carrying around a decapitated head, who's just essentially there as, the funny man to your straight guy. What a genius stroke. I mean, it is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. He's got some of the funniest lines in the game, and he's so dismissive of Kratos being a god and just doesn't really give a shit about what he thinks. It's just brilliant.
But also, I like how in the second game, his role almost turns into like, not a counselor to Kratos, but like a parent in therapist, doesn't it? He's like trying to say like, oh look, just understand where the boy's coming from and stuff like that. And it's almost like he's a relationship counsellor for Kratos.
Totally. And that game deserves everything it got. It won the 2018 Game of the Year award at the 2019 BAFTAs, along with awards for Best Narrative, Best Performance. It was basically the Expedition 33 of its time. It got Best Narrative, Best Performance, Best Music, Best Audio Achievement. And Ragnarok repeated that success in 2023 with 14 nominations and winning 6. We'll get to Ragnarok in a sec. And Christopher Judge's performance won Best Performer in a Leading Role at both the BAFTAs and the Game Awards for his work on Ragnarok. So, we talk about the voice acting and things like that. Yeah, he did that. And he did something very special, which I'll get to when we talk a bit about the trivia during that acceptance speech. But yeah, I think, the cast are sublime. They're brilliant. Freya or Faye, we should talk about her because she's brilliant in it as well. Her, the way because you essentially meet her in the underneath of a turtle tree thing.
It's a tree on a turtle, isn't
tree
it?
on a turtle. So it's a very random, but again, beautifully done. Absolutely stunning. And her part in it is phenomenal as well, because she is essentially, spoiler alert, she's Balder's mum, and is pretty pissed off that you want to kill him.
Which was a real turnaround at the end of that game, wasn't it? And just about that level, because again, the majority of the game you're in those snow-covered, very, very white, very monotone in that sense, and then you go to her world, her realm, and it's colourful, it's bright, and it just really stands out, doesn't it? See, I wanted to come back to actually, was there any reason, did you see anything about why they changed the voice actor? Because they've clearly gone back to T.C. Carson for the original games. So it's not like they fell out with him. So was there any reason why they went?
That's a good question. You tell us more about the game and I'll have a look for you, Dan.
No, I can have a look. You crack on with your story. But because I'm worried I'm going to give too many spoilers away for a game that's like 7 years old.
I wouldn't worry about spoilers at this point. If you haven't realised there are going to be spoilers in this game, we can't talk about Ragnarok without spoilers, to be fair, Dan.
Yeah, that's true. There's spoilers for the game. We've probably said loads.
There's spoilers all over the place. Yeah, I'm not sure why they moved away from to Christopher Judge, who Christopher Judge is brilliant anyway. If you've ever seen what's the sci-fi series, Dan?
Oh, now you're going to make me think
Egyptian
about
one with the circly jump through
Stargate.
Stargate. He was brilliant in Stargate. He was a legend. He was very funny, very dry, and he fits perfectly into Kratos. To be fair,
here we go. I found it. So the answer is,
I love an answer.
Allegedly to enable a single actor to handle both voice and physical motion capture.
Which would make incredible sense because he embodies Kratos in that entire role.
So Judge's larger physical build better match the character's new, more mature and grounded depiction. Yeah.
There you have the answer, people. Dan, on point as always. I should have had that locked and loaded, Dan, but well done.
No, it's just a random thing. Yeah.
So God of War, superb. So essentially, God of War, at the end, you end up discovering in a very sentimental piece that your son Atreus is actually the embodiment of Loki, and that Faye was actually one of the ice giants.
Yep.
And so your son is a god. So you can't avoid, or Kratos rather can't avoid, what was meant to be, which is his son is a god, and now he has to in Ragnarok help him come to terms with that. So, Ragnarok starts a few years later. So, I actually know, before we do, I do just want to talk about the fight with Balder.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Which is just one of the most visceral, epic fights ever put on screen. It beats out the Thor fight, that comes afterwards. I just think that scrap with Balder is brilliant. And it's so well choreographed. And bearing in mind, this is one-shot camera.
Yeah. The advantage they've got as well is the fact when you've got two sort of like gods fighting each other as well, they can really go hell for leather, because normal physics and physiology goes out the window then.
Yeah. But totally. In that fight, I was watching the most recent Superman movie that Snyder did. When he's fighting Zod, and a lot of that reminds some of the shots and things like that reminded me of that fight. And I'm like, but obviously, God of War felt like it did it first, and it's just such an amazing scrap. If you haven't watched it, stick on YouTube and watch the fight between Kratos and Balder. It's just brilliant. So, sorry, yes, God of War Ragnarok starts a few years later. Atreus is now growing up into a young man, and Fimbulwinter has gripped the realm. So Fimbulwinter, for those who don't know, comes before Ragnarok, which is the end of life as itself, or certainly the end of Norse life. Fimbulwinter has gripped the realms, and Kratos and Atreus are looking for answers about the prophecy of Ragnarok and what Loki's role is in it, because in Norse mythology, Loki brings around Ragnarok. So they essentially spend most of it. It is another. It starts off with a great scene with the wolves and the riding on the sledges, and essentially you spend a lot of it again on a bit of a road trip, fighting against Thor and Odin. And then at some point during it, it splits, doesn't it? And you end up taking control of Atreus solely.
Yes.
Because that's one of the things we didn't talk about in God of War. The unique mechanic that introduced was, whilst you didn't take control of Atreus, you did have the ability to use his abilities in combat. So freezing people with the bow and things like that, really subtly introduced and done so well, which really amped up the combat. But in Ragnarok, you actually get to take control of him. And initially when I played it, I was a little bit like, don't know if I want to do this.
So as well. It's like, you're playing it to be Kratos, and now you're playing a kid. Yeah. But
I think what they did brilliantly was, they clearly understood the difference between Kratos being this hulking god of war who's like super all powerful, opening, smashing chests and stuff. And then I think they allude to Atreus trying to hit the chests and open them, and then eventually using his bow as a crowbar and things like that, rather than, which is just brilliant.
But the other thing it does as well, and sorry if I'm going to jump on what you're going to say, big part of the second game is, so there's all those murals, isn't there, that depicts the future, what has happened and what they think is going to happen. And Kratos sees one where it looks like he's lying dead in the arms of Atreus, isn't it? I think. And he's trying to obviously come to terms with that. So when you're playing as Atreus, he's kind of maturing because he's trying to save his dad when his dad is getting angry and doesn't want him to go off on his own. And so Atreus, when you're playing Atreus, it for an element of, I think, was it the first game at least, he turns into a bit of a spoiled brat.
Yes, he does, yeah.
But I think the playing of Atreus was an attempt to show you, the player, that no, he's going to be forging his own journey, and he's actually doing this for his dad.
Yeah. He's maturing throughout the second game, and he's actually recognising he can forge his own path, but still please his dad, I guess, appease his dad, and without specifically sticking to the code that his dad has asked for. Because I think Kratos spends almost the entire story trying to keep him away from Thor and Odin. And he defies him. He meets Angabora, and then he goes off and he ends up in God, can't remember the name, but Asgard. He ends up in Asgard, which is the walled city where Odin and Thor, and you have to excuse my age, I'm 50 apparently. And then they basically end up in a big scrap and destroy Asgard. Essentially, what happens? Odin dies, and the ending wrapped up a bit odd. You end up walking along this path through these caves and speaking to people, a bit like you did in the first game, I guess. But realizing that your son can forge his own path, so you kind of set off on your own, really, don't you? At the end of it.
Yeah, because he wants to go and find, because I think he realizes that some of the giants are still alive. And so he wants to go because he is a descendant, so he wants to do that. And I think Kratos is that. And it's actually quite an emotional ending, because Kratos sort of reluctantly allows him to go because he knows he's got to fulfill what he wants to do, right? And
exactly that.
It's quite sad, because you then see him, you think he's on his own, but he's not, because you've got Mimir still stuck to his hip, and then you've got Freya who's turned around at the end of that game.
Yeah.
And you've also got, I just can't remember the name of his brother, which is Brock and Sindri. So Brock and Sindri are like the two dwarves who are in both games, right?
Yes, they are. They're amazing.
But there's that emotional punch with that. So they develop what are two not throwaway, but two kind of like sidekick comedy characters, comic relief. That's it.
They are.
But then turn that into a serious thing at the end. I don't know if you remember that, but it's like...
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and that feels like that's going to be potentially playing into any upcoming sequel.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, I love those guys, and they were phenomenal. You eventually end up traveling to the Dwarf Realm, which I think you talked about in the previous episode, where it's it's very and everything's played out brilliant there because you have to duck to go through all the doorways, and you have to you're obviously wandering around massive in the area where you obviously used your boat to get to. Brilliant. I haven't played, and I'm now thinking I will go and play the DLC Valhalla. Which is the epilogue for Kratos, where he travels to Valhalla and faces manifestations of his past, including his younger self and Helios, and kind of tries to reconcile his history as this monster in Greece, where he becomes this redemption in Norse, in the Norse realms. So I love the God of War. I love the most recent entries. I love the original entries for what they were. Two very different styles of game, but all done brilliantly well. I think I said before, I was a little bit disappointed that there was no news on any potential new games. However, I think just last week, Christopher Judge, who is the voice of Kratos in the more recent entries, did allude to a late summer tease for an unannounced project from Santa Monica for 27. So potentially a new entry in the game or a new IP altogether. And interestingly, while I was looking looking for research, I do research, there were hidden cutscenes in Ragnarok that may hint at the next location for the game. So a user on Reddit had shared results of one of their deep dives into the game files for Ragnarok, and discovered two hidden cutscenes that were never released. And this had happened in 2018's God of War for Ragnarok, so something similar. And they think they point to the setting of Egypt for the next God of War series. So
makes sense, doesn't it? If you're going to do these big lore-rich mythologies, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was essentially Atreus. The transcript was Atreus and a character called Mao. And Atreus is essentially talking to him, and Mao is very much like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. Only says his own name, but Atreus can understand him. So they're traveling and having a conversation. The other one was Athena and some higher beings who basically talks about one who failed us and one who rejected us. And so what they think that alludes to is the one who failed us being Odin, because he was supposed to stop the God of War, and the one who rejected us was Atreus because he decided not to take on the mantle. So it'd be interesting if that does pan out, because I think there's a lot of there, and obviously Mao means cat in Egyptian. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out, if it is true, because I think there's a lot of mythology sitting around Egypt and the Egyptian gods and things like that they could dig into. So again, another entry that could do some, as we saw with Assassin's Creed when they did Origins, we could end up with something really cool as well, and some very different landscapes.
It's that I was going to say, landscapes, because and I remember saying at the time in Ragnarok, when you first go into the main world that you're going to be in, it's totally different. It's all sort of sunny, it's arid, and it's a real contrast. And again, it kind of is a massive jolt. So to see Kratos in that environment will be, and Atreus is going to be quite an interesting.
I can't wait.
Shakeup.
I genuinely can't wait. So look, before we wrap, I just want to touch a little bit about what's next. So we know that Amazon Prime have their live action series based on the most recent entries in the series, and I'm kind of half hoping that we'll have some flashbacks to the Greek elements. Would be amazing, and then maybe a series that covers those later. Look, we've got a big cast here. We've got Ryan Hurst as Kratos, Callum Vinson as Atreus, Mandy Patinkin, which I'm completely excited about as Odin. He was in Homeland, wasn't he, Mandy Patinkin? If you haven't seen him, he's a phenomenal actor. And what I'm more excited about is it's actually Ronald D. Moore, who's taken up the mantle as showrunner. And this is the guy who brought us Battlestar Galactica, For All Mankind. He knows story incredibly well and can tell a really great slow burn story if it's required. I think he'll do wonders with this. I'm really excited about seeing how Amazon Prime put some money into this and make it a prestige event for TV. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you've got the whole Norse mythology, I mean, like I said, everyone kind of knows an element of it because you kind of know about it at school, and the fact that, you know, Marvel's probably helped cement, you know, Norse mythology a little bit in recent years.
Yeah.
But yeah, to see, it'd be fascinating to see, you know, look at how Fallout has been put out onto the home screen. Yeah, I think God of War, there's no reason why it shouldn't do well with the casting that's been announced and the material it's got to work with.
And we've had some great gaming TV recently. We've had The Last of Us, we've had Fallout, we've had, you know, so we know it can be done really well. So let's keep our fingers crossed. And Mass Effect soon. Fucking one episode, dude. Not this episode.
Not this one.
Do you want some facts?
Yes, please.
Before we go.
Yes.
So we talked about the no-cut miracle. So in 2018, the camera never ever cuts away. It's one continuous shot from the opening menu to credits. It was considered impossible by many technical leads at Sony at the time. And to pull it off, every transition, loading screen, which is disguised by the world tree when you're wandering around it, and death had to be choreographed to keep your perspective anchored to Kratos. Just a huge technical feat. Yeah. I'm still gobsmacked by that. Christopher Judge, so we talked about how amazing he is, but he almost turned down the role of Kratos because he was skeptical of video games. But he eventually, he eventually took the role, but nearly quit when he heard Cory Barlog was leaving for the sequel. So he nearly quit on God of War 2. God of War Ragnarok, sorry. And what else have we got? Before the ending reveal of 2018, the game actually hides the name of Loki in plain sight. So when you're fighting the stranger, or Balder as it becomes, you can see runes on the large stones that you throw at him, and they spell out his true name in Norse. They spell out Loki as you throw them to him. And then Mimir, in Ragnarok, he mentions a story about Kratos entering a strange tournament with beasts, princesses, and musicians, and this is a reference to Kratos' appearance in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, which I think was quite cute.
At that. That's cool.
Just finally, so when I talked about Christopher Judge doing something quite special at one of the Game Awards speeches, he actually now holds the Guinness World Record for the longest award acceptance speech that was at the Game Awards 2022. 2022, and it was his speech for the best performance that lasted nearly 8 minutes, surpassing the previous record for the longest speech, which was at the Oscars. So,
and who wouldn't want to hear more of that voice as well?
That's the thing. It's just a beautiful voice, isn't it? It's just so good.
The one thing I was going to add, because you talked about like the world loading and stuff like that. It's a subtle little thing as well, but you know how every kind of game like this has to have one where you're going through a crack in the wall or something.
They've got lots of those in this.
They've got lots of those. But what I liked about it, and again, it's quite subtle, but it shows that like the father-son dynamic is every time you go through it, if Atreus is with you, he stands aside to let Atreus go first. Yeah. So he's behind Atreus. And again, I like that as a little touch because they could have just made you go first and just load Atreus behind you. But it's like showing that Kratos is always thinking about his son and making him go first.
It's all the little things, isn't it, that you notice? And they are such amazing games. And Dan and I both love them to bits. You should, if you haven't played them, if you can play them on the Sony back catalog, or pick them up and go and play the originals. They're amazing. They're very, very different if you've only played the Norse duo. But
playable on Steam Deck. Playable on Steam Deck.
And both brilliant, both, amazing games in their own right, all of them. But very different, for very different reasons, but super, super enjoyable. Have fun with them. Go and have a look at them. I hope this has educated you somewhat on it, or just me and Dan pouring love into a series that we've both really enjoyed. Right, that's it. That's all I've got for today. I'm 50, so I've got to go and tuck myself up in bed, apparently. Dan, we will just say, if you've enjoyed the content, if you've enjoyed what you hear, or if you just want to have a chat with us or have a comment, please do like and subscribe on YouTube, and we're available on all podcasting platforms, which you know because you've probably got them now, and listen to it. So do interact with us. We love that. We love hearing from you and your history and thoughts about God of War. Mr. P, anything else from you, my friend?
No, just thank you for picking a great subject, and thank you to everyone who's listening and watched.
Indeed. Thank you. And I'm off to have a slice of birthday cake.
Put your
Boy!
dressing gown and slippers on, right?
Yeah, exactly. Pipe and slippers.
All right.